Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 188 of the podcast. And in this episode of the podcast, I'm talking about the future of the Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James, because I don't feel good about the future of the LA Lakers. They feel like a team without a direction. As of this moment, the Lakers are barely a top 8 seed in the Western Conference and are the oldest team in the NBA with an average age over 30 years old and filled with former stars. Carmelo Anthony, who has been consistently good with the team but isn't the lethal scorer he once was. Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan, who used to be two of the best defensive players in the entire NBA, are now a shell of themselves, and they have Russell Westbrook, who once again is not fitting perfectly with a new team. He had the same issues in Houston and Washington. Really, he hasn't fit in with another superstar player since Paul George. We all know why the Lakers went with this strategy this past offseason, because they have LeBron James, and when you have LeBron James, you do what he wants you to do, and he wants to play with these guys. He wants to play with one of his best friends, Carmelo Anthony. He wants you to bring back Dwight Howard, who was part of that championship roster. He wants you to bring in DeAndre Jordan. LeBron James loves playing with aging veterans. This is a guy who's won NBA championships because of veteran play. Ray Allen hit one of the most clutch shots in his career as an older player on the Miami Heat. LeBron James has relied on these guys. LeBron James does not love playing with younger players. I think that's a fair assessment if you look back at the career of LeBron James. This is a guy who had Andrew Wiggins traded away so that the Cavs could bring in Kevin Love. In this past offseason, the Lakers jettisoned their young roster. They got rid of their youngest players. They got rid of Kyle Kuzma. They got rid of Montrezl Harrell. They didn't bring back Dennis Schroeder, and they replaced them with Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard. They brought back Rondo, who they just traded away. And if you look at LeBron's career with the Lakers, you can see that the young players that they've gotten rid of have kind of become solid NBA players. I mean, Julius Randle was a member of the LA Lakers. Now he's a bona fide all-star on the New York Knicks. Yes, it was worth it. The Lakers won a championship, but the Lakers would look really differently right now if they had Julius Randle on the roster. And another guy they got rid of was Lonzo Ball, who now is the perfect point guard. This is what happens with a LeBron James-led team. You sacrifice your future for the now, and it ended up paying off. They won a championship. The Lakers got what they wanted in the end. But my issue is, what does the Lakers' future look like? Here's a fun game to play. Who would you rather want on your roster right now? Russell Westbrook or Lonzo Ball? The clear answer is Lonzo Ball, whose career is on the rise, and Russell Westbrook is on the latter side of his NBA career. And this is a real debate you could have. Over the next 5 years, who would you rather have? Anthony Davis or Julius Randle? If I had asked that question a few years ago, I would have got laughed out of the room. But right now, I think you could have a serious debate about who is the better NBA player between the two former Kentucky bigs. And I get it. LeBron brought them back to the postseason after a 6-year absence. He won a championship with the team. But again, the Lakers' future does not look all that bright right now. And if I were a Laker fan, that would drive me crazy. I would not care if this team right now recovers and makes the postseason. They have zero chance of winning it all. It should not be about this year anymore. It should be about the long term. What is the future of the LA Lakers? You have to get me excited. Yeah, you have Anthony Davis locked up, but he's shooting less than 18% from free. And my issue with him is his offensive game has not evolved whatsoever, and it's getting worse. When the Lakers won it all, he averaged 26 points per game and shot 33% from free. This year, he's averaging 23 points per game, but like I said, he's no longer a viable threat to hit a free-point shot. He gets injured all the time, and without LeBron, I have no faith that he could bring the Lakers to the postseason. Anthony Davis is a Robin. He's not a Batman. The Lakers have to prepare with life without LeBron because there's a pattern of what happens when LeBron leaves teams. They become bad, and that's because of two two things. The first is obviously LeBron is irreplaceable. He's one of the best basketball players of all time. He's arguably still the best player in the NBA. You cannot replace the production of LeBron James. It would take an army to get that production. He is a one-of-a-kind, generational type talent. But the other reason these teams don't succeed is because they don't prepare for life without LeBron. The Cleveland Cavaliers should have known that LeBron James was not going to play his entire career as a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Miami Heat were not prepared when LeBron decided to go back to Cleveland, and they made frantic decisions. Like, here's a list of some of the really bad decisions made. First, by Cleveland, they decided to re-up Kevin Love in one of the worst contracts in the NBA right now. It is insane that Kevin Love is still a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the Miami Heat did the exact same thing with Chris Bosh. Now, Chris Bosh ended up having health issues, but the Miami Heat were afraid of their future, so they just said, let's give Chris Bosh a ton of money. And it did not work out. The same way it did not work out for the Cleveland Cavaliers. These teams were not ready for life without LeBron, and that's my big fear for the LA Lakers right now, is they will go back to being mediocre once LeBron leaves them. Now, when they won the championship a few years ago, I thought they were set with life without LeBron, because I thought Anthony Davis would take the mantle, but now his game has gone backwards. I have zero faith in Anthony Davis right now to be the face of the LA Lakers. Like I said, I think he's a Robin, he's a sidekick, he's not a Batman. I don't think the Lakers have a viable future with Anthony Davis as their best player. Clearly, they want Anthony Davis on their roster. He's one of the most talented big men I've ever seen, but I think he's more of a Kristaps Porzingis type player than he is a Shaquille O'Neal type player. And I don't necessarily mean that as a diss. What I mean is Shaq can win championships on his own. He can be the best player on an NBA Finals team. Kristaps Porzingis and Anthony Davis are two of the most talented big men I've ever seen. I just don't want either to be the best player on my team. Porzingis needs to play with a guy like Luka Doncic. He cannot be the best player on the Dallas Mavericks, the same way that Anthony Davis cannot be the best player on the LA Lakers. I saw it with the Pelicans. They didn't go anywhere. That's what life would be like with Anthony Davis as the best player on the Lakers. And there's absolutely no one else on the Lakers besides AD that has any chance of being part of their long-term future. That's a problem. No one looks at the Lakers and go, even though the team's not great, I'm excited to see what they become, because you know what they are. I know what Carmelo Anthony is. I know what Avery Bradley is. I know what Dwight Howard is. I've seen them play. There's no room for growth. Listen, I'm a Celtics fan, and the Celtics are not very good right now, but I can look at Robert Williams, and I can get kind of excited to see what the future is going to be, because he is a guy who's continuing to ascend. The Lakers have no one on this roster that is ascending, and that's the big problem. They are a mediocre team with no one who's rising above their talent level. No one is maturing. No one is becoming a formidable NBA player. They are all just what they are. Aging players who aren't what they once were. And this has been an issue for LeBron James-led teams in the past. Remember when Cleveland, when he brought back Dwayne Wade? I mean, LeBron is way too reliant on former NBA stars who he used to play with. He looks at Dwayne Wade and he still sees the guy from 2006 and the guy that he won championships with in Miami. Dwayne Wade was not that same guy. He looks at Carmelo and he still sees that guy who was in Denver who he was playing against. He still looks at them as his peers. LeBron James has lapped those guys. He's still very elite while those guys are not. Having aging veterans on the roster like Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, and Avery Bradley only makes sense if you are in contention of a championship, and right now the Lakers are not that. I mean, look at the LeBron James teams of the past. They've always had those guys, Mike Millers, Richard Jeffersons, these aging veterans who hit big shots. Rashard Lewis was on the Miami Heat. These are the type of players that LeBron James has won with. But the problem is when you have a mediocre team, they don't make sense playing. Right now, it doesn't make sense for the Lakers to even play Carmelo, Avery Bradley, and Dwight Howard. And listen, I totally get it. The last thing a team with LeBron James wants to do is think about the future, because with him on your team, there's a chance you have a trip to the NBA Finals. But with a 37-year-old LeBron, that should be Lakers GM's Rob Pelinka's number one priority, the future. And there's one trade worth worth exploring that I feel kills two birds with one stone. It would help the Lakers compete this year and make their future look less bleak. And that's trading for disgruntled Sixers point guard Ben Simmons. I know a lot of you feel like he's a lost cause. I don't. And I think LeBron is the perfect mentor because he has been through playoff struggles. In theory, they could go after other guys like Domantas Sabonis, Karl-Anthony Towns, Bradley Beal, CJ McCollum, or Dame Lillard. But in reality, one of the few remaining teams that most likely would take the monstrous Westbrook contract is the 76ers, who are trying to win right now. And if the Lakers agree to pay any of the contract, a deal might be possible. I mean, Westbrook is owed a ludicrous $47 million next season, which might end up making any trade with him impossible. But a future with Ben Simmons and Anthony Davis sounds a lot brighter than what the Lakers' future looks like right now. Simmons is only 25 years old, and for the majority of last year, people thought he was the defensive player of the year, and I think he could learn a lot from LeBron James. No, I don't think LeBron James is going to help Ben Simmons develop a jump shot, but he is going to help him become a formidable NBA star, which Ben Simmons was. Maybe Ben Simmons is never going to be an all-star, but I like the idea of having a future with Ben Simmons and Anthony Davis, and maybe when LeBron retires, you can get a third star. But I think bringing Ben Simmons to the Lakers makes a whole lot of sense because you need to think about the future. It's not about bringing Ben Simmons in, making this team win a championship. It's about the next 5 years, and I think in the next 5 years, Ben Simmons could go back to being a formidable NBA player. And I do think it also makes sense for Russell Westbrook to want to be on the Philadelphia 76ers. Doc Rivers has had a whole lot of success with veteran point guards, Rajon Rondo, Chris Paul. The Lakers don't want Russell Westbrook on their roster, and the Sixers don't want Ben Simmons on their roster. This trade makes sense to me because the Sixers are a veteran team that needs to win now. They have Joel Embiid, they have Tobias Harris, they have Danny Green. They are a veteran roster that needs to win sooner rather than later. These players are not getting any younger, while the Lakers are an older team that's not competing and need to think about their future. Ben Simmons makes way more sense for this roster than Russell Westbrook does right now. And I want to reiterate this. The LeBron era for the Lakers has been worth it. It's like when they brought in Wilt Chamberlain. They brought in a guy who was one of the best players in NBA history, and they ended up winning a championship with him. He was in the tail end of his career. Before LeBron, the Lakers were a mess, dealing with constant controversies. The D'Angelo Russell, Nick Young situation, LeVar Ball constantly talking about the team's failures and his son. There was a question of who was going to run the team, Jeannie or her brother Jim. So yeah, this is a massively successful team. LeBron's won a ring with the team. He brought in AD and he helped bring them back to respectability. But right now, none of that matters. It's about where the Lakers are headed. I don't think you can look at this current Laker roster and be excited about the future in any way whatsoever. And the Lakers historically have not transitioned well from superstar players. Shaq left the Lakers and then they had some few lean years with Kobe Bryant, and then they were able to turn it around because they were able to build around Kobe Bryant properly. Then at the end of the Kobe era, you had to deal with Dwight Howard. You seemed like you had the perfect transition. Kobe was going to retire. Then you had Dwight Howard. He was going to be the face of your franchise. And then that didn't work out because those two stars feuded. And then the Lakers ended up paying Kobe Bryant a ridiculous amount of money at the end of his career. It didn't make sense. The Lakers do not know how to transition properly from their superstar players. And they need to learn so quickly because the end of LeBron James is closer than the beginning. He's 37 years old. At best, he has 2 or 3 more formidable years as a top 5 NBA player, but he is not going to be able to carry your basketball team by himself anymore. So that's why bringing in Ben Simmons would make sense, because LeBron would be able to mentor Ben Simmons, still be a part of a winning team while also building towards your future. You want both things. This year does not matter for the Lakers. The future is what matters. What I'm about to say might be the craziest thing I've ever said on a podcast ever, whatever, but hear me out. There have been 3 teams that have won a championship with LeBron: the Cavaliers, the Miami Heat, and the LA Lakers. And 2 of them were not properly ready for LeBron James to leave their team. It happened to the Cleveland Cavaliers twice. He left them the first time. They became really bad. They drafted number 1 draft picks, Kyrie Irving. Then the second time they drafted Anthony Bennett. I mean, it's ridiculous how many times the Cleveland Cavaliers were not prepared for LeBron James leaving them. And then you had the Miami Heat, who were not ready for LeBron James to go. They thought they would just keep on going to the NBA Finals, because I get it. You're obsessed with going to the NBA Finals. Why would you think about the future? I'm going to say this. I would be more impressed if the Lakers were properly ready to move on with LeBron James and they set up their future than if they won an NBA title with him this season. Because I've seen that movie before. You can win with LeBron James, but no team has been able to move on from LeBron. And I don't mean that as in like move on from LeBron, he needs to go. I mean that in your team is really good because of LeBron. Can your team be really good without LeBron? None of the other 2 teams have been that. Maybe the Lakers could be the first team to do so, and that would be super impressive for me, because no team has been able to move on from one of the greatest basketball players of all time to this point, and the Lakers have a real chance to be the first. But right now, I would say they're blowing it, because no one on this roster is a part of their future other than Anthony Davis. Lakers fans don't want to hear this, but the worst case scenario is closely coming to a reality. LeBron James retires, walks away from your team, and you go back to being a team that misses the postseason 6 years in a row. So if the Lakers want to avoid that, they need to think about where they're headed from here. There's no one on this roster to get excited for. They don't have draft picks coming in because they're not bad enough to get a really good draft pick. They don't have young players who are building. Again, they have Carmelo Anthony, who is also on his way out. They have Dwight Howard, who is on his way out. These are guys who are not going to be playing basketball in 2 years. They're going to be retired, and sooner rather than later, LeBron is going to be retired as well. You need to think about life without LeBron, and I know it's almost impossible to do, because it's intoxicating to think that you're going to turn it around, because that's what every LeBron-led team has done. They've been able to turn it around. We've seen LeBron have mediocre regular seasons before. They turn it on after the All-Star break, and they make it to the NBA Finals. I'm here to say, even if that does happen this year, it doesn't matter, because there's nothing to get you excited about the Lakers in the next 5 years. The next year or 2 does not matter. Do you want to be relevant for the long term, or do you want one more championship with LeBron James? You need to start thinking about the long term. As a Lakers fan, I would care about the long term of the team. This team isn't going to the NBA Finals. This team isn't going to win an NBA championship, and I don't care if they make it to the play-in. I don't care if they win a round or 2. I care about where this team is headed, and right now, it's impossible to get excited about that. Remember when Dallas was losing Dirk Nowitzki, one of the best power forwards of all time? They weren't upset. You know why Dallas fans weren't upset? Because they had Luka Doncic. Yeah, Dirk Nowitzki had not been very good for a very long time, but that team had a brilliant transition plan. They had the next star player on the roster. The Lakers do not have that star player. I think if they bring in Ben Simmons, they would have a chance to have that star player. I know a lot of you are down on Ben Simmons, and he's an offensively imperfect player, but I think there's still potential for him to be one of the very best players in all of basketball. I know that sounds ridiculous. How can he be the best player when he doesn't show up in the postseason? Well, once upon a time ago, LeBron James did not show up in the postseason against the Dallas Mavericks, and then he became one of the best postseason players I've ever seen. Things can turn around. One postseason does not define a player's career. I still believe in Ben Simmons, and I think the Lakers need to make a Ben Simmons-like trade to save their future. The Lakers don't need their older veterans to play better. They need to get younger. They are the oldest team in the NBA. Again, with an average age of over 30 years old, there's nothing to get excited about the future. That's what it's about for me. Do you want this good ride to keep on going? Because it won't, because once LeBron gets off the ride, it looks like it's all over. Unless you make a move that might not look great in the moment. Again, people aren't going to get all that excited if they bring in Ben Simmons, but I think it would be the right move to make make, and it's the move that the Lakers need to make. Maybe it won't happen, but if it does, I'll be the first one to say that was a brilliant move by the Lakers. They don't need Russell Westbrook to play better. They need their roster to get younger, and they need to get their fans excited about where they are headed, because the future is what it's about when it comes to the LA Lakers. And the Lakers should see this coming. They should have known it was going to be this way when they brought in LeBron. They didn't bring him in when he was 25 years old. He was 34 years old when he became a member of the LA Lakers. They did not have a 10-year future with LeBron. So for them to possibly not be prepared for it, I think would be unforgivable. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So please rate, review, and subscribe.